Our Earth stands alone, a life-supporting oasis in an otherwise barren solar system. In the 20th century, pollution has emerged as one of the major threats to the delicate balance that sustains life on our planet. Man's appetite for resources often harbors dire consequences. As we convert raw materials into consumer products, our environment is subject to ever-increasing stress. The waste we create today will haunt us tomorrow. Industrial pollution and the flagrant overuse of our resources are not self-correcting. Nature can't always cleanse herself. Some damage may be irreversible. Our children or grandchildren will ultimately pay the price.
Individual industries can be taught not to pollute, or to produce better stuff, or cleaner stuff, or more efficient stuff, or not to use so much raw materials and so on. What worries me is the difficulty of persuading the society to change its way of life. That's really hard. It's ridiculous to expect it to happen quickly. I don't think it's going to happen until humanity has had some very nasty experiences.
Tonight, we will focus on two environmental controversies. The first concerns Duluth, Minnesota, situated on Lake Superior, and a company thought by some to be endangering the city's water supply by dumping into the lake.
Well, I'm distressed about the quality of the drinking water here in Duluth. We were always famous for our pure water, and now it's contaminated so that it's not healthy to drink. And we get our water from the fire station or from the store.
Well, I sure wish I didn't have to go get it. I don't think it's right that we do have to go get it.
Well, I drink it out of the tap, and I really, don't think too much about anything. My mom and dad have been drinking it for all their life. My grandma and grandpa have, and I have, and nothing's happened so far, so.
Oh, I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions about it, but seeing that my children are both small, I don't like to take any chances if there is something that could happen.
God, nature created the lake 10,000 years ago, and we're letting a company kill it in 20 years. That's obscene, I think.
I've lived in the city of Duluth for 53 years, and I love the water, and I still drink it out of the tap. However, my wife does take the drinking water in the cartons home for herself and the kids.
Occasionally, I pick it up at the store, and I do use the filtered water, I think, because maybe I feel guilty about feeding it to my kids, but like I say, I have mixed feelings about it.
Until the facts are published and are known, I don't think that people should be subject to pay the water bills that they pay.
Well, I drank it all my life, and my children they drank it in their formulas. I don't know. I'm not that worried about it until they come up with something really concrete, I'm not going to worry that much about it. As far as I'm concerned, nothing's really been proven yet.
Lake Superior, the world's largest body of fresh water. We brought the Flying Calypso to its shores to get a first-hand look at the environmental furor over the massive dumping of mining wastes or tailings. Every day, the Reserve Mining Company at Silver Bay, Minnesota, produces 33,000 tons of iron ore pellets from taconite, essential to the production of steel. The enormous residue of the process, some 67,000 tons of tailings, roar down the sluiceway into the lake each day. Recently, it was learned that reserve mining's outfall was largely responsible for the presence of asbestos-like fibers in the drinking water of over 100,000 residents of Duluth and neighboring communities. We know asbestos fibers are a health hazard when inhaled in high concentration. But there still is considerable dispute as to the potential effect of ingesting similar fibers for drinking water.
A great many people are like myself, who once felt that this was the greatest water in the world. It was clean and cold and pure, and if you were out in a boat, you just dip down and get a pitcher full and drink it right there. The scientists have proven in court that it is no longer a good water supply. In fact, the EPA, at least 2 years ago, removed the certification from the Duluth City water.
There are very high levels of asbestos in the drinking water. These levels are much higher than any other city in the United States. These levels are primarily from the discharge at Silver Bay, Minnesota. If you were to consume a quart of water on your visit here, you would have, on the average, somewhere in the order of 200 to 800 million fibers of asbestos per quart of water. And the significance of that is that this particular material is a known human carcinogen.
It's a terribly cruel predicament for many people in this area. They care very much about the situation, but they're caught with this dilemma of jobs or health. In the meantime, a lot of people are saying, well, we need the jobs now, and so they're enduring. I think it's not insignificant that the heart attack rate in Silver Bay, for example, is phenomenal.
There's one call for a possible heart attack every 5 days. Well, this is a very high incidence. What do you think it's attributable to?
Well, I think it's probably a lot of inactivity in Silver Bay. Probably something to do with the job in itself, the possibility of losing the job.
So you think it's anxiety?
Oh, there's bound to be a certain amount of anxiety.
Do you think it has affected the people to that point?
Well, I believe it almost has to. I mean, what the heck, it's your job, it's your house, your lifetime investment, and it's hanging by a thread, you know.
There has been a lot of bitterness from the people in Silver Bay towards environmental groups, and I think a lot of it is justifiably so. And there aren't too many jobs in the taconite industry that are directly related with jobs of other industries, so people who have these jobs may have a very difficult time obtaining the same type of employment elsewhere in the United States.
Traditionally, unions have not hesitated to put an economic crunch on companies in order to get better conditions for their workers. How is the case different this time?
The scientific community hasn't proven a thing on the whole thing, you know. Now, if there's a health hazard, we wouldn't wait for the state of Minnesota to shut Reserve down. We would, as a local union. We'd shut them down tomorrow if there was a health hazard.
Nothing was found that would indicate that any of our people were being harmed by asbestos poisoning of any sort. And I think now the federal people are saying, no, it really takes 30 to 40 years. I don't know why they went from 20 to 30, they skipped 20 to 30 years, but before it was 15 to 20, now it's 30 to 40, which puts us farther and farther away from a definitive answer on what could possibly happen. So maybe the federal people should go and do their homework, could be my suggestion to them. I think they have accepted at face value a phrase that this is asbestos, rather than going into a true investigation of the basic structure, and just accepted it.
The presence of asbestos at reserve mining, I think, has been well established. To the extent that this mineral cannot be used commercially to form an insulation material, this is not truly asbestos. However, when one refers to the asbestos fiber problem, we're really not talking about the very large fibers that one makes into a cloth or something of that sort. We're talking about the very small fibers which can be only seen under the high magnification of an optical microscope or electron microscope. These are the fibers which are associated with disease. And when one looks at the fibers in the Reserve Mining Company tailings, you find fibers which are identical to the asbestos fibers in industry which cause disease.
Well, I think we agree that there are some fibers in Duluth drinking water. There are various kinds of fibers in Duluth drinking water. Some of the fibers have been attributed to our tailings. And we have found in our research that similar or identical fibers have been in the lake for long before Reserve Mining Company started, because we have found that similar fibers are in the rivers today.
But why did the
Sudan.
state of Minnesota sue for $40 million? That seems to be an enormous amount.
It is an enormous amount, and I honestly don't know why they did it. If you look at their initial claim, they wanted to reserve to be fined something in the neighborhood of $10,000 per day, and they had listed 10 or 15 different laws they say that we violated, and we should be fined $10,000 for each one. And of course, the way Judge Devitt ruled, for most of it, he said we were not guilty of any of those, but we were guilty of violating our permit from 1947.
People, when they're totally overwhelmed with information, they lose track of what their common sense should be telling them in the long run. That this kind of discharge and this kind of violation of the public waters should have been stopped. Despite what all the little details are, they're no longer that important. The main issue is that they shouldn't be putting this in the water.
Reserve Mining Company has said a long time ago that if we had the facts to show that we were harming anybody, we would have stopped ourselves. They wouldn't have had to, nobody would have to done it for us. But where you get into the difference of opinion as to which facts and what are the facts, and then the interpretation of the facts. Nobody, to my knowledge at least, has shown exactly what causes the water to be green at times versus blue. And we feel that in some cases cloud cover makes a difference, but there are times when you'll see a greenish tinge to the water. Now, if you take a sample of the water and hold it up to the light and compare it, you can't find any difference. But there could be some fine particles. We've never been able to show a difference between the water that looks green and the water that looks blue. We haven't been able to find out.
We took the Calypso diving team to the shores near Silver Bay, where Reserve Mining's discharge spews over the lip of the delta. Evidence suggests that a variety of factors have caused a wide dispersion of waste sediments beyond the dump site. The battle over Reserve Mining's disposal methods is being waged in protracted court litigations. Still unsettled are questions as to the eventual health effects of the asbestos-like fibers. Another key concern is the fate of 3,200 employees and their families. Reserve Mining has stated that if environmental restrictions are too severe, the company will be forced to shut down.
There are a lot of people in Duluth who feel that there's no problem at all. They're not observing any increased disease, for example. And I think it's hard for people anywhere to understand something which represents a possible health problem 20 years away. People just don't relate to that kind of environmental hazard. I think as time goes on, the general public is going to learn more about these things, and perhaps it'll even be incorporated into educational programs so that children of the future will understand and protect themselves against these kinds of things as they occur in the environment.
Reserve mining is under court order to stop dumping in the lake by summer 1977. But potential dangers lurk in land disposal as well. Perhaps most disturbing of all is the time factor. A final verdict on the dangers to public health may still be years away. After leaving Minnesota, we took the flying boat across the Canadian border to northwest Ontario. We had learned of a serious health hazard from toxic wastes. For more than a decade, a paper plant had been dumping mercury into the English Wabigoon River system. Hardest hit are the native Indians who once relied on the river for their livelihood. Now they may be victims of one of the most dangerous pollutants known to man.
It was in the spring of '70 that the Ontario government wired all of the camps and the Indian people living in the area that the fish had levels of mercury that made them unfit for human or animal consumption. And so this is when the problem started for all of us, ourselves as camp operators, neighbors that were camp operators, and the Indians that were working for us, most of them from Grassy and White Dog. They closed the commercial fishing at that time and declared this area as a fish for fun area. And what they meant was that if people wanted to fish and throw the fish back and not eat them, that they could stay open. There is a paper company that operates upstream that used mercury in their process, and they were dumping the mercury into the river system, and it was coming down and affecting the fish all the way through the system. They have tried to warn the Indians that they shouldn't eat this fish, but when they see the tourists coming and eating it, they say, well, you know, if it's all right for the tourists, it must be all right for us. They just don't believe them. It gets right down to the dollar. That's the whole problem. It's once they close it, then who's going to compensate? What are they going to do with these Indian people, with the camp operators that were operating? And how far down the line does it go with the businessman in town? Mm-hmm. Does the fellow that runs the filling station, does he get compensation because his business has been hurt? This is the whole problem. They know it's a health hazard. They're putting the dollar ahead of the hazard.
I understand the doctors came and analyzed your hair and blood samples.
Yeah.
And they find a lot of mercury.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what they said. Yeah.
What do the children have some?
Yeah, they have some mercury levels in them too, in the blood and hair.
Do you know how much?
Somewhere around 35.6 parts per billion, I think it is. That's what they said.
And you?
I got about 99 parts per billion, I think it is.
How do you feel about what happened?
For me, it's hurt my family a lot. I mean, since the ban of the commercial fishing. Because I used to make good living on commercial fishing, but now I can't.
We attended a meeting in Kenora, Ontario, between Indians and government officials.
For many years, there has been concern about mercury poisoning from eating fish. We know that mercury poisoning can make people very sick and even cause them to die. We know that many of the Indian people have eaten much fish that contain mercury, and that many of the people have amounts of mercury in their bodies that could be dangerous to their health. We also know from our examinations that some Indian people have problems that could be due to mercury poisoning, but it's impossible to be certain. Almost all the symptoms caused by mercury could also be the result of other causes, such as birth injuries, epilepsy, alcoholic disease, or side effects of certain medicines. There is no single certain way to examine a person and say for sure that he has mercury poisoning unless he is very severely troubled. What we can do, however, is to carry out a very special kind of study that may tell us if some of the symptoms that some people have are likely to be the result of mercury poisoning. This is called an epidemiological study. We would like to do a study of this type on grassy narrows and white dog reserves. The whole study would take approximately 2 years. All communities involved would get progress reports throughout the study, and we'd get a final report at the end of the study.
What we're dealing with here is a situation where people are facing a risk of mercury poisoning, which, from my point of view, the risk is far too high. But they have not reached the point where they have severe signs and symptoms where a trained neurologist, a trained physician can go in and diagnose the case and say, unquestionably, this person has methylmercury poisoning.
According to a natural resources minister, he says there's no sign of mercury poisoning or health affecting the health of the people of White Dog and Grassy Narrows. Well, don't forget, like in Minamata, they didn't know until well, everybody was starting to die off, and this had been going on for 20 years. So we're only on the 6th year.
Minamata, a fishing village on the Japanese island of Kyushu, scene of the most devastating industrial pollution case on record. Outside Chiso Corporation's gates, a Buddhist demonstration dramatizes the human tragedy of mercury poisoning, now called Minamata disease. A chemical corporation discharged toxic mercury into Minamata Bay over a 13-year period. This poison contaminated fish and seriously affected hundreds of villagers. The death count stands at over 100, but the toll in damaged brains, chromosomes, and twisted bodies is greater still. Angry demonstrators buy 1 share each in the Chiso Corporation to make their contempt known at the stockholders' meeting. To date, the Chiso Corporation has paid almost $70 million to the victims of Minamata. Neither expressions of anger nor admission of corporate responsibility can undo this tragedy.
We sent a couple of our natives people from here to Japan, and when they came back and seen what was there and talked to the people, and then the thing is getting pretty serious after that. Another 10 years from now, 10 to 15 years forecast, like, well, then we'll know what's going to happen. Maybe by that time, there'll be a lot of autopsy tests going on, because the people will just be dying off left and right.
There is understandable concern that the case of Keith Papacy may echo the horrors of Minamata.
I've seen a film of the Japanese that were sick from it. I mean, from mercury, and that's how I noticed what was wrong.
In a case like Keith Papacy, the muscular incoordination is obvious, the difficulty with speech and voluntary control of movements. But it's much more difficult to demonstrate the sensory impairment and the impairment in vision and in hearing.
Probability certainly is that it's mercury poisoning. The important message is that that's what mercury poisoning looks like. That's the kind of tragedy it produces. And I think there is a tremendous responsibility on the public health authorities concerned to do everything humanly possible to prevent more such cases.
They don't even think that we exist. And the thing is, I mean, the poor kids are going to be, in the future, they'll be all having the same kind of problems. You can't give a kid a new life, no matter how much money you stack up.
It seems like the people are caught. We're caught up in the air. We don't know how to get down.